Good evening, Thousand Oaks. I will call to order this closed session meeting of the Thousand Oaks City Council for Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. We begin with a closed session and go to our city clerk, Ms. McGuire.
Roll call, Councilmember Adam,
Here.
Councilmember Engler,
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Taylor,
Here.
and Mayor Newman.
Here. And as I mentioned, we go to closed session.
Thank you, Mayor Newman. We have three closed session items, all three pending litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.98. The first one is California Department of Housing and Community Development versus Shangri-La. Second is F. Roberts Construction versus Shangri-La. And the third one is Clinton versus Gessler.
Thank you, Ms. Noonan, and we will return at 6 p.m. All right, we are back from closed session, and we'll begin by going to City Attorney Tracy Noonan.
Thank you, Mayor Newman. I have nothing to report.
Thank you. And at this time, I ask if you are able, please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we begin this evening with special presentations, so I will move to the podium for those events. First, I would like to welcome Denise and David Belko, who are ambassadors for Donate Life. Donate Life is the nonprofit organ and tissue donor registry dedicated to saving the lives of thousands of Californians awaiting life-saving transplants. The Belko family became involved in organ donor advocacy after their son, Michael, at the age of 20, saved the lives of 8 people through organ donation. The City Council encourages Thousand Oaks residents to participate in Donate Life California Donor Registry, and we are therefore proclaiming the month of April as DMV Donate Life California Month. So we have a proclamation for you. Please come forward. So in proclaiming April as DMV Donate Life California Month, we're happy to present you with this proclamation. We're very grateful for the good work that you do. Encourage everyone to take part in this program. And if you'd like to say a few words, and then we'll take a picture, please.
I'm Denise's mother, and she lost her son, like you said, when he was 20, and a few years later, I lost my son. So my son was her brother, her son was my grandson. So this was a double tragedy in our family, but the good thing that came out of it, Michael had a pink dot on his driver's license. We didn't know that at the time, but when we saw that, his organs and tissues were donated. Because of that, all of us and the rest of the family who did not have a pink dot went to the DMV and got the pink dot on our licenses. And then, like I said, a few years later, my son died, and so his organs and tissues were also donated. So you never know what's going to happen. I really encourage you to do that because you could save lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, our gratitude for encouraging. It really is very simple, just checking a box at the DMV to join the organ donor program. And we encourage everyone to take part. And now, if you'd like, we'd like to take a picture with my fellow council members. So our second presentation this evening is to proclaim this week as Crossing Guard Appreciation Week. I am pleased this evening to welcome Graham Watts, the city's Emergency and Transit Programs Administrator, who also sees the city's Traffic Crossing Guard program, to provide some brief comments about the program and to recognize the fine work of our crossing guards who help guide kids and adults cross several intersections throughout Thousand Oaks each school year. Mr. Watts.
Thank you, Mayor Newman, members of City Council. As we know, we have Crossing Guard program. We have about 35 crossing guards that cover 24 designated locations citywide. They work every day assisting youth, parents, dogs, and bicyclists, twice a day, 5 days a week, all throughout the school year. Rain, heat, whatever it might be, they're out there doing their job, taking care of everyone. That's about 400,000 pedestrians every year that they assist just cross the street. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate your recognition of the great work they do. And tonight we have a few of them, so I just want to say thank you to everyone and our crossing guards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if I could ask our crossing guards to please come up and join us for a picture and to receive congratulations from all of us. We're very grateful for you all. Now is the time for public comments. Do we have public comments this evening?
We do not.
No comments this evening. Very well. We move next to our consent calendar. Council members, are there any items to pull or comment on? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, we do have one speaker on the consent calendar.
Very, very good.
We have Mr. Clint Foltz on Zoom.
And there he is. Good evening, Mr. Foltz.
Hello, my name is Clint Foltz. I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks and a member of the Conejo Climate Coalition. I'm pleased to see that the city is moving forward with great endeavors like the electric vehicles, battery storage, solar infrastructure program, and the purchase of 2 electric vans for the Dial-A-Ride program. Thanks to the council and city staff for their continuing efforts to keep our air clean and community safe. 2024 was the hottest year on our planet since record keeping began in 1880. And unfortunately, we're on track to see 2025 break that record. Despite what you may have heard from certain media outlets and politicians, the laws of physics have not changed this year, and scientific facts remain scientific facts. If you were to ignore physics and science, you could argue that, geologically speaking, we are in a colder climate, so we don't have to worry about human-caused global warming. Nothing could be further from the truth. To quote paleoclimatologist Dr. Jessica Tierney, quote, "It certainly has been warmer than today in the deep geological past, but those past warm periods developed slowly over millions of years. As a consequence, life on Earth had time to adapt. The problem with current global warming is the speed. The warming that humans are causing is unbelievably fast, and so humans and the other life forms that we share this planet with can't fully adapt. In fact, Rapid warmings in the geological past are often associated with mass extinction. Abrupt climate change is hard for life to tolerate. So that underlies the danger in allowing our climate to warm so fast right now, end quote. Over 99% of climate scientists agree that our climate is warming and humans, mainly due to the burning of fossil fuels, are the cause. You wouldn't call a plumber to paint your house or an electrician to fix your toilet. So as a community, let's listen to the experts when it comes to our climate, not politicians beholden to the oil industry. Thanks again to the city for supporting great endeavors like the electric vehicles, battery storage, solar infrastructure program, and the purchase of 2 electric vans for the Dial-A-Ride program. Thank you for keeping our air clean, and thank you for keeping our community safe.
Thank you, Mr. Foltz. So there is a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk to please prepare us for a vote.
And that motion passes 5-0, and I have an ordinance title to read. That'd be an ordinance amending the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code relating to regulation of accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and junior accessory dwelling units, JADUs, by updating Title 9, Chapter 4, Article 2, Section 9-4.202, definitions, Article 21, Section 9-4.2104, permitted use matrix residential zones, and Article 45, Section 9-4.4505, location and number of ADUs, Section 9-4.4506, development standards, Section 9-4.4507, objective design standards, Section 9-4.4508, parking, and Section 9-4.4513, statewide exemption ADUs to implement recently adopted state law, MCA 2024-70005, ordinance number 1735-NS.
Thank you very much. We have no public hearings this evening, but we do have a study session and a department report. We'll begin with the study session, which is our 2025 draft citywide user fees, fines, penalties, rates, and assessments, and also development impact fees. And for that, we have our finance director, Ms. Jamie Boscarino, and available for questions are budget officer Ryan Roman and building official Teo Franco. Good evening, Ms. Boscarino.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Tonight is the study session for the proposed fiscal years 2025 through 2027 user fees, fines, penalties, and development impact fees. This action tonight is our first step in our fiscal years 25 through 27 biennial budget process. Although this is the first time we're presenting at City Council, staff has been diligently working on our budget process since October, and the user fees in specific since that time as well. We also presented our proposed user fees to our Finance Audit Committee on March 24th. Our proposed user fees include 685 fee lines. Also included are our proposed fines and penalties and adjustments to development impact fees. Rates and special assessments are also charges City Council adopts but are not being proposed in tonight's study session as they come later in the year. Before we dive into our draft user fee schedule, it's important to define what exactly is a user fee, which is distinctly different than a tax. Back in November 2010, the public voted on and approved Proposition 26, which specifically defined what constituted a tax. The proposition defined a tax as any levy, charge, or exaction of any kind imposed by a local government that doesn't meet one of 7 exceptions set forth in Proposition 26. Whereas a fee, on the other hand, is charged to an individual or group that actually receives a private benefit from the service that is provided. A good example of this would be the city's library, which is funded by both taxes and by fees. The library itself provides a public benefit and thus is primarily funded by taxes. However, a homeowner in the city pays property taxes annually, of which a portion go to fund the city's library. The homeowner pays those taxes whether or not they actually receive a benefit, whether or not they actually ever even step foot in the library. They're still paying taxes that go to fund the library. Library user fees included in our draft fee schedule presented tonight, however, are only paid by individuals or groups that actually receive a benefit or service from that fee that they're paying to the library, such as renting a meeting room in the library or using a copier at the library. It's important to know the difference between the two, as taxes are only able to be approved by a vote of the people, whereas for a user fee, that just requires a vote of City Council for approval. As mentioned, there are 7 exceptions in Proposition 26 to what constitutes a tax. The first exception is a specific benefit or privilege, an example of which is a fee that is charged for a restricted parking permit, such as for residents that live by CLU. A second exception is the specific government service or product, which is a charge only paid by individuals that request that particular service. A photocopying fee, for example, on this one. A regulatory charges exception is a fee charged to regulate a specific business, such as taxi operators, as staff incurs costs to ensure that the business meets specific regulatory requirements and issue their license. The fourth is user charges, which is a charge for the use or entrance to a government property, such as rental of a meeting room. The fifth are fines and penalties, such as parking citations. The sixth is developer charges, which are charges imposed as a condition of development. And the seventh exception is benefit assessments and property-related charges governed by Prop 218. This includes our city's lighting and landscaping assessment districts and water and wastewater utility rates. Some common fee concepts include that it must meet one of these 7 exceptions we just covered. If it's a service-based fee, it may not exceed the cost of the government providing that service. The government can only recover its costs. It must specifically benefit those who pay that charge. It must not unintentionally be subsidized. The city does have several fees that are intentionally subsidized, as we'll cover later, but a government can't unintentionally subsidize fees. It must be reasonable. A good way to ensure reasonableness is by periodically benchmarking fees against other agencies. And it must not be arbitrary. There has to be a basis for charging the amount of the fee. When examining taxes versus fees, the funding source for the specific service or benefit provided can vary. Some services are funded 100% based on fees if they are completely for a private benefit. Some are 100% based on taxes if they are solely for a public benefit, while some services are a combination of fee and tax-based if they're partially for private benefit and partially for public benefit. A good example would be an advanced planning fee. If the city were to charge this type of fee, it would be based on a rate to pay for a portion of the service that is related to the private benefit, while the rest of the service would be funded by taxes, as doing advanced planning such as a general plan assists all of the residents in the community. For our 2025 fee update, the city issued an RFP last summer for a user fees and cost allocation consultant. After a competitive process, staff selected Matrix Consulting Group. Matrix has extensive experience working with local governments throughout the state and performing cost of services studies. Matrix has brought a new approach to the city's fee structure, moving from a several hundred-page user fee manual to a more streamlined and simpler fee schedule, which should improve clarity and usability to the user. The consultant team worked with staff from each department over the past several months, evaluating existing fees and whether they were still necessary, what the cost is providing that service, if the methodology was still appropriate or needed modified, and whether any new fees should be included. Citywide fees were consolidated into applicable departments. For example, film permit fees are being proposed to move from CDD to Cultural and Community Services in order to provide a much quicker and streamlined process for users. Previously, fees had multiple sub-fee components, which made it sometimes difficult to understand the fees being charged, and now each fee is separated out individually in the fee schedule. Good practice is to periodically perform a comprehensive cost of services study in order to ensure user fees are based on the cost of service and not unintentionally subsidized. The city completed a cost of services study in 2013 for CDD building and safety, planning and code compliance, and public works engineering fees. In 2021, we did another cost of services study for CDD planning and code compliance fees and public works engineering fees. As mentioned, staff worked with Matrix Consulting on the cost of services for fees in this 2025 fee update. We looked citywide at every single fee in this cost of services study and did a new cost estimate out of all of these fees. The cost is calculated by looking at which staff provide the service, how much time they spend on it, and the activity levels of the fee. The cost of salaries and benefits, materials, and overhead are all combined to determine the cost of service. The city has a full cost recovery policy when it comes to setting fees based on our commitment to fiscal sustainability. Our goal is for the fee revenue to cover the cost of staff providing the service to the user, so it is not subsidized by general tax revenue. When a fee is set under full cost recovery, that means that the general taxpayer is subsidizing the private benefit a user receives. The fee is calculated based on the cost of providing that service, which includes personnel costs, materials, and overhead. City Council's policy is that specific fees are not to be at full cost recovery, thus they are being intentionally subsidized. Based on this City Council policy, fees that are of a community-wide benefit and fees where the use of tax revenue would be appropriate for community-wide service are some of those that City Council has specified as the exception to full cost recovery. Other fees may be homeowner-based fees that City Council believes should be set at a lower rate. The next few slides provide the list of 16 fees that City Council has established as exception to full cost recovery. The current fee and the proposed fee amounts are included for reference. So here's 4 of the fees: the disabled access board appeal, a block party, a special event, farm animal permit, and a few fees for oak and landmark tree permits. On this next slide, you have a precise plan of design fee for an existing home, a minor mod for outdoor dining, a minor mod for a SUP type C and freestanding ham radio, that says ratio radio tower, an appeal of admin decision to the planning commission, and an appeal of a planning commission decision. A zoning clearance fee, an appeal of an admin or traffic and transportation commission decision directly to city council, an appeal of an admin decision directly to city council for crossing guards, and parking permit. These following fees are fees that Public Works is proposing to be added to the city council cost exception list this year. 3 of these are fees that are inspection related that an owner is required to do, and if reports are provided timely and require no additional inspections from the city, we are proposing that a fee will not be charged. If owners do not meet requirements and the city has to go out and inspect or re-inspect, then they would be charged a fee. The other fee is a waiver required during times of drought when water conservation requirements are in place and a property owner has a hardship or a disability and is requesting a waiver. Staff spent several months reviewing the current user fees and any changes in services and developing the proposed user fees. The proposed user fees will be discussed in the next few slides. The city currently has 679 total fees, and based on proposed new fees, deleted fees, and modifications, there are 685 total proposed fees tonight. Of the 685 total fees, 208 are being proposed to increase to get closer to full cost recovery, 110 are proposed to decrease for various reasons, and 332 are proposed to remain the same, either because they are already at full cost recovery, they are on the exception list, or in theater's case, for example, they need to remain competitive in the market. This accounts for 64.5% of total proposed fees are not being increased. City Clerk is proposing 5 new fees, mainly related to subpoena fees. 1 fee is proposed to be deleted as it is being consolidated with similar fees. CDD building, there are a few new fees being proposed: a permit application fee, a solar app fee, electrical permit fees for standalone fixtures, and an alternate means and methods review fee. Several fees are proposed to be deleted that are either no longer being charged, consolidated into existing fees, or no longer necessary. The major adjustment to building fees is the modification of the building permit fee from a valuation method to a square footage method, as well as simplifying the fee schedule to make it easier for the public to understand. CDD planning, there are 2 fees that are being proposed to be added: a parcel merger fee, and a zoning compliance letter fee. There are 4 fees that are being proposed to be deleted as they are no longer needed. For community and cultural services, on the theaters and community services side, 1 new fee is being proposed for theaters. It's a security fee for performances. This cost is currently being absorbed by the city. 3 fees are proposed to be deleted, and as mentioned, filming permit fees are being proposed to move to community services from CDD. For the library side, there are no new proposed fees and only a deletion of a microfilm copy fee. For finance, there are new fees related to room rentals, as well as adding the Acorn Room as a rental site, in addition to a fee if a business needs to amend their business tax certificate. 4 fees are being proposed to be deleted as they are consolidated into the copying fee if needed, and the print shop services fee is not necessary as this is charged internally to city departments. Cannabis fees are being proposed to be moved from CDD to finance, as the finance department currently works with the cannabis businesses in the city and not CDD. For police, there are no new fees proposed. The false alarm registration fee is being proposed to be eliminated, as it was an administrative burden and did not have the intended effect that police was hoping for with getting users to register their false alarm and hopefully eliminate the false alarms. So we are proposing to remove that fee. The false alarm fee was also modified to include a fee separate for whether you're a residential false alarm or a commercial false alarm. So they would now have different fees that they would be paying. And then finally, for Public Works, they proposed 4 new fees and deleted 3 fees that aren't being used anymore. As part of the user fee study, a comparative survey was conducted that benchmarks the city against other comparable jurisdictions to understand the local fees for comparable services. The 5 agencies studied include Camarillo, Oxnard, Santa Clarita, Simi Valley, and Ventura. It's important to note that although it is best practice to do a comparative study, it is not necessarily comparing apples to apples, as not all cities regularly update their fees or regularly perform full cost of services studies, and some, such as Camarillo, may contract out their work instead of performing it in-house. The city is on the low end of the land division parcel map administrative processing fee, with Camarillo and Santa Clarita being the outliers. For the landscape plan check, city review, and processing fee, the city is slightly above average, but still below Camarillo and Simi Valley. For certificate of occupancy fee, the city is slightly below the average, but somewhat similar to Camarillo, Oxnard, and Ventura. One of our newer fees, the EV charging station fee, the city is well above average. Although we are very similar to Simi Valley, it's likely that other cities have yet to fully study the cost of providing this service and are lagging full cost recovery significantly. The city is above average for a plan check and inspection fee for single-family residential home, although a little less than Santa Clarita and just slightly above Ventura. For a new commercial plan check and inspection fee, the city is below average, but this is likely being skewed by Santa Clarita being quite a bit higher than all other agencies. For a public improvement plan check and inspection, the city is below average, although on this one, probably skewed by Ventura's fee being so much higher than other agencies. For a minor encroachment permit, the city is below average, although similar to Simi Valley, with Camarillo being significantly higher than other agencies. Moving on to development impact fees, we are also including proposed increases for our development impact fees. These are fees that are governed by the Mitigation Fee Act, AB 1600, and are charged to new development to pay for the required capital improvement infrastructure costs arising from development projects. These include our road and traffic fees, our water and wastewater plant improvement and connection fees, and facility fee. Per AB 1600, the city annually reports to the City Council the revenue and expenditures associated with development impact fees. If for some reason the city did not fully utilize the fee collected for projects, the fee is required to be refunded to the developer. Public Works completed the traffic impact fees study in April 2019 and plans on doing a new study during this upcoming fiscal year 25-26. These road and traffic fees will be increased by the construction cost index of 11.93% per resolution. Water and wastewater plant improvement and connection fees were adopted by City Council back in October 2023, so those are not being adjusted at this time, as staff will be back before City Council this fall. And the police facilities fee is being adjusted by 1.58% per city resolution. Staff is currently in the process of working with our consultant to update our water and wastewater financial plans and develop rates. And we will return to City Council this fall with our draft financial plans and rates for water and wastewater. The rate development for this is governed under Proposition 218. The city has both the lighting and landscaping assessment districts. A separate report is prepared annually and brought to City Council each spring with the proposed assessments, so that will be coming shortly to you. So to recap, tonight's recommendations are to receive the information on our proposed user fees, as well as provide any direction to staff and set our public hearing for April 29th, 2025 to hear the final fees, which would then become effective July 1st, 2025, as well as to find that this action is not a project as defined under CEQA. And with that, myself and staff from various departments are available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Boscarino, for that comprehensive report. Before I go to council member questions, I should note that the city's Deputy Public Works Director, Nader Hadari, is also available for questions. Apologies for the oversight. And with that, let's turn to council members for questions on the proposed fee schedule. Councilmember Gutierrez.
I just had a quick question for better understanding of the supplemental packet. I believe we talked, and I was eager to see them a little bit more in detail. This is a first for me, so learning a lot about all of the revenue and services, really, that the city offers, and there's quite a bit. Probably not surprising, the section that became of most interest to me was the library fees. My son and I spend a lot of time there, so it's near and dear to my heart. But the question is also, it also shows up in different sections, but I just wondered if I could get some clarification. There are certain fees that list Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, and I wanted to understand what that was because while there is a recommended fee, we have a 0 that we're going to be requiring, and then Group 3, we require a fee. So I just wanted to understand that.
Right, so this is for all of our meeting room rentals, not just in library, but here at City Hall as well. So Group 1 is government agencies, so we recommend not charging ourselves or charging other government agencies to rent our rooms. I believe Group 2 would be nonprofits.
Okay.
And so, we recommend 0 for nonprofits to be able to use meeting rooms. So Group 3 would be anyone that is any business, a for-profit business. And so we charge businesses, and
Okay.
those agencies are for-profit, a fee to rent rooms.
Understood. Thank you. That makes a lot more sense. And then there was another fee, and really probably not a question, just a comment. Some gratitude because there was a recommendation to increase the library card from free to feed, and we continue to keep it at 0, so I appreciate that. And then there may have been just one more. I apologize. Let me find the page. And then I think in our previous meeting, I had made a note of the single-family fees because they were one of our above-average categories. But I'm now seeing that the modified indicator means that they are coming from a different, or I guess I would love to understand what modified means outside of, the definition of modified.
Okay, now John. Good evening. The modification comes from applying fees on a valuation base. What that means is that before or today, we would receive fees based on customer declared valuation or what we think in the building department that permit would need to be evaluated for. So for instance, price of construction, right? If you have a home that is 2,000 square feet, today you can't really build without $400, $500 maybe dollars per square foot. So if the customer comes in with a valuation based on a written contract with a contractor, then that would be what we would base our fees on. The modification comes from moving away from this fee and charging on a per square foot basis. The rationale behind it is that higher end maybe finishes should not be reflected in the time that we spend to review or inspect certain permits.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions of staff? Mayor Pro Tem Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to actually piggyback off the question from Councilwoman Gutierrez. So just to confirm on single-family residents, this fee structure going to square footage as opposed to appraised value is more beneficial to the resident or more cost-effective to the resident because they're not being penalized by maybe having more expensive appliances? Did I hear that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay, great. I love the sound of that. Second, can you walk me through the balance between making sure we're covering our costs? Because I totally agree with you. We have people that work here as well. I don't want to have to pull out of taxpayer dollars to support our operations as really as a business or an organization. Can you talk about the balance between that and also being competitive so we're not outpricing or de-incentivizing investors to come in and how you kind of navigated the two?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance, right? Because if you aren't charging full cost recovery, then it's coming from taxpayer revenue to fund those services. But at the same time, you don't want to price yourselves out. And we don't want to be the most expensive city to build in, most expensive city to do any development in. So we're looking at a balance. Our goal is always full cost recovery. But if we're looking at our comparator agencies and we're seeing that we're significantly on the high end based on what other cities are charging, then that's a fee that we might look at and say, you know, we're comfortable not being full cost recovery on that because, again, we want to be a place that people want to come and develop and live here and build here, and we don't want to be too expensive for that to happen. So it's up to each individual department. They're looking at their fees, they're doing that analysis and determining what that good price point is to charge for that fee.
Okay, thank you for that. And then last, looking at the comparison of fees for neighboring cities, it looked like to me that we were pretty competitive on, you know, a lot of the fees. Maybe there was some that we were a little bit higher on, but on average, it felt like we were competitive. Would you say if you were going to aggregate all of them, that would be the stance that comparing to other cities, we feel pretty competitive with our fee structure?
Yeah, and we don't, I mean, there's almost 700 fees, so we don't do a comparator for every single fee that we have. But we're looking at some of the, you know, more useful ones in public works and in community development with building and planning. And then for Jonathan's purposes with our theaters, looking at where we're at rental fee-wise for our theaters, because we want to have acts come here and we don't want to price ourselves out. Or for our full cost recovery to, you know, rent this theater, the Kavli, we would never have anybody that would come and want to rent out. So although we don't look at every single fee, we feel that we do a pretty good subset of maybe some of more of the common fees and making sure, you know, we're where we should be.
Great, thank you.
I just had one question regarding the presentation. This has to do with appeals of planning commission hearings, either administrative to the planning commission or planning commission to city council. I was struck by the really big delta between the actual cost of in excess of $16,000 in both cases for an appeal and the proposed cost of $1,621. so almost a 10x multiplier. Can you speak a little bit to what goes into that full cost recovery? Why is so much higher? Because I know we have on occasion gotten complaints that 1,600 is too much, but I had no idea that the full cost is really 10 times more than that. Can you speak to that?
I'll do a little comment, and then I'll turn it over to Nodder, as these are more public works and CDD-related appeals that are occurring. But it does take significant staff time to do the research, to prepare a staff report, to come here to City Council, and to present at City Council. So it does take a lot of time and effort from city staff to process those appeals and bring them forth to City Council. And Nodder, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think you covered it, and the multi-department angle as well. Each of these items, as they're appealed and need to come to City Council, they involve that department, the finance department, city attorney. There's just a lot of effort that needs to go into doing all the research and bringing the item and hearing those appeals. It's just a time-extensive exercise.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And often the appeals turn on extensive discussions of technical questions that may involve research. As you say, they may go across department boundaries. So all that really adds up. So that's where the 16,000 is coming from?
That's correct.
Great, thank you. Any other questions of staff? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion or further discussion. Councilmember Adam.
Well, I want to thank Jamie and the staff. And this takes a lot of time to put this together. And it's just the beginning as we embark on our 2-year budget project. So just keep moving forward. But council, the good news, if you want to have a block party with farm animals, it's going to be cheap. Bob, make a note of that. Anyway.
I'd be chicken to do that.
Okay. Anyway, I like some of the moves that you made here. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but the fact that you put the filming fees with cultural fairs, good move, because Jonathan knows we want to grow that business, and so he should be running that as well. Perfect fit. The cannabis fees make sense. They're no startup businesses anymore. It's just a fee collection, so that makes a lot of sense. The EV fees are a little bit above average, but that just shows that we're ahead of the curve from all the other cities. We have more EV stations than anybody, and we're operating them, and they're going to catch up with us, if not pass us. But big picture, 2/3 of the fees that we charge remained unchanged or actually decreased. A pretty good average. As a politician, I take that as approval rating any day of the week. So now that's great that, you know, we're sensitive to what we charge, and we really look at it carefully. And but we like to get full cost recovery where we can, but we can't always, and that's understandable. So with that, I will move 11A, the city drafts study for the fees. And you'll come back to us with that.
Thank
for a
you.
final vote. Yeah.
Is there any further discussion
Just for clarification, it's all 3 recommendations.
based on the recommendations?
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you. Councilmember Engler.
No, I'm happy to see us attempting to go as much as possible for full cost recovery. There are some of our rooms that we rent. I appreciate that we do rent them to nonprofits, and it's reflected in a reduced amount of money that we're collecting below a cost recovery. During the week when City Hall is open, the fee is basically nothing for, say, a club that wants to meet there to help give more services to the city. So I appreciate that we're trying to get full cost recovery, but also recognizing the benefit of some of the things that we're doing to help others in the community produce for us. So thank you.
Thank you. I want to add my thanks to staff, all departments, Ms. Boscarino, but really all departments, in working together to pull together almost 700 fees. That's quite an undertaking, and it's just the beginning of our budget process. So thank you for your work thus far on this. I want to echo what's previously been said about it is good to recover the fees. I think there's a very enlightening exchange between you and Mayor Pro Tem Taylor about the need to strike a balance where there are actual costs to our residents and our businesses for providing services, and wherever we can, we try to recover all of that. But state law also prohibits us from treating this as a money-making venture. It is not. We charge what it actually costs to provide a service, and we have excellent services. I'm glad to see that there are many places where we provide a break to residents and businesses. I think those are well merited. I also agree it's nice to see the film permitting process being streamlined and moved to a new department. I have heard from multiple location scouts around the industry and around our area that this needs to be easier, so I'm glad we're moving in that direction. And overall, I'm glad to see that, for the most part, we really are holding the line on, as Councilmember Adam noted, something like 2/3 of these are staying where they are or actually decreasing. So again, my compliments, and with that, Madam Clerk, let's vote.
And that motion passes 5-0.
Again, thank you. Our next and final item this evening is our annual general plan and housing element progress report, in which we learn what we're doing with our general plan and what progress we have made in calendar year 2024 on housing progress. So I'll give them a minute to get set up, but we will be hearing this evening from Senior Planner Ian Holt of the Community Development Department. And available for questions are Kelvin Parker, the Community Development Director, Fabiola Zelaya Melliker, who is the Deputy Community Development Director, and Kristen Rice, the Planning Division Manager. Mr. Holt, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. So the presentation I have you for tonight is basically a summary of the general plan and housing element annual progress report for the 2024 calendar year. And just for some quick background, the California Government Code requires all jurisdictions to file a general plan annual progress report, a housing element annual progress report, and also a component of that is the Housing Successor Agency annual report, both to the State Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, which was formerly known as OPR, and also the Housing and Community Development Department, HCD, prior to April 1st of each year. These reports for the calendar year are required to be submitted to each jurisdiction's lead decision-making body, that is yourselves, in a public setting prior to submitting to the state. Since the adoption of the General Plan 2045, there has been one amendment to the General Plan. This is associated with a project that had been in process during the final stages of the adoption of the General Plan. It is associated with a General Plan amendment and zone change for concurrent actions on a density transfer between 400 East Rolling Oaks Drive to 355 West Jans Road. And that was all concurrent with the entitlements for the Comprehensive Cancer Center at 400 East Rolling Oaks. Basically, I'll just frame it as a land use swap that was necessary to be consistent with the no net loss law under the Housing Crisis Act. And so basically those concurrent land use changes were necessary to ensure that there's no loss in the residential capacity as adopted by the general plan. So, throughout 2024, we hit the ground running. Several general plan policy implementation actions in the short-term category had been accomplished or within progress. Those actions related to the land use chapter, safety, and governance chapters primarily. However, in attachment 1 has the full list of those actions that had occurred. But most notably, the creation of the mixed-use zoning district, as well as the rezoning of the properties associated with that land use designation, all served as the city's primary housing strategy for the housing element, and was necessary to have that action taken prior to receiving full certification for the housing element in 2024. Work is currently underway with Lisa Weiss Consulting on our comprehensive municipal code update associated with all the zoning regulations, so that will be aligned with the 2045 general plan. Also, work that was underway during the general plan was the inclusionary housing ordinance, so that fulfilled that action item. Also, there was the adoption of the climate and environmental action plan through Public Works, which was also an item. And then an overhaul of the city's website to make it a little more user-friendly. And as well as there's progress on the design contract and for the downtown Thousand Oaks project, which was known as the Campus Master Plan during the general plan. But yeah, as I stated before, the full list of those implementation actions are attached in attachment number 1 of your staff report. So moving forward to the 2024 housing element annual progress report. The housing element evaluates existing and projected housing needs, outlining goals and objectives relative to the preservation and development of housing in the city. It also provides programs for implementing these housing goals and objectives. The report includes a summary of the residential and building permit activity progress of the 6th cycle RHNA, implementation of housing programs, Housing Successor Agency annual report, and also includes reimbursement sought by the city for the LEAP grants that the city was awarded. Major component of the housing element is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment allocation, provided by HCD in coordination with the Southern California Association of Governments, SCAG, for the 8th year cycle. The city for this cycle, as you know, received 2,621 units with specific levels of affordability. The City of Thousand Oaks has met this obligation by allocating land that can accommodate this RHNA through the General Plan 2045, as well as the rezoning for the mixed-use areas. Excuse me. So essentially, the report is utilized using the forms and definitions adopted by HCD. In addition to the tracking progress towards RHNA through the issuance of building permits, HCD also collects data on the type of housing projects submitted to local jurisdictions, whether the projects are approved or disapproved, the number of streamlined applications, whether that's through density bonus, SB 35 or SB 9 applications, and also requests for density bonus and the concessions that are associated with those. And as mentioned before, the LEAP grant reporting reimbursements. The complete report is within attachment 2. This slide basically summarizes Table A of the report, attachment number 2. And this documents new residential development applications that had been submitted and approved between January 1st and December 31st. All in all, there was 108 applications amounting to 109 units. Ultimately, 107 of those units were approved within the year. Now, per HCD, only formal applications that have been deemed complete are included in this housing activity. Note that the entitled projects by the Planning Division that have not received building permits yet do not count towards the progress in meeting our RHNA. Moving along to Table A2, which is more of the comprehensive report, this actually captures all of the entitled units for the year 2024. And that And so that's basically, the reason for that is obviously projects take a lot longer than a year to process. And two of the most notable projects that were approved that year, we have the Hillcrest Herbs 78 affordable townhomes, partnered with People's Self-Help Housing in the city, as well as 500 East Thousand Oaks Boulevard mixed-use project, which consisted of 328 units. 44 of those were low-income units. The remainder of the units approved for the year were predominantly ADUs. So for Table B of Attachment 2, in 2024, the city issued a total of 82 building permits for new housing units. Basically, that was 74 accessory dwelling units, 2 single-family detached, 5 multifamily, and 1 manufactured home. It's important to note here that though ADUs make up the majority of the units, the city cannot require affordability covenants on those ADUs. However, the city is making efforts and trying to capture voluntary information of whether those units would be rented to family members and thus qualify to be recorded or reported as affordable units in the event that they are used by family members. So this table basically summarized the overall progress towards meeting the RHNA. There are 2,274 units remaining in the sixth cycle. All in all, with the 82 that were permitted this past year, 347 units were permitted in total for the current housing cycle. Just as another reminder, the city has fulfilled its obligation by zoning the land that can accommodate this RHNA. So the units that have been, the permits issued here are not reflective on the efforts the city has made to promote housing. However, there still are approximately 1,960 residential units with approved entitlements, including 289 deed-restricted affordable units. Many of these units are associated with large projects that have been affected by circumstances beyond the city's control, primarily due to the instability of the market and high costs associated with construction financing, insurance requirements, the labor market, and fluctuating interest rates. However, the number of units issued by the city is anticipated to increase dramatically in the coming years as entitlements move forward. In 2025, the city anticipates issuing permits for some of the larger projects that we have on the books. It could be Latigo 2150 Hillcrest Road specific plan, 333 units, as well as the Timber School site with 218 apartments, both of which have affordable units associated with their density bonuses. Also making headway is the IMT Capital on Hampshire Boulevard, and it's hopeful that they either seek permits towards the end of 2025 or in the beginning of 2026. Staff continues to work with developers and to ensure the completion of these projects are done, and are confident that the affordable units will pull building permits in the near future. So other than accounting for the number of units that have been approved or permitted within the city, also we have the variety of programs. There's 19 programs in all associated with the housing element. Just to kind of highlight some of those programs that have been implemented in 2024. Primarily programs 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 were all accomplished with the adoption of multiple municipal code amendments associated with one, primarily, as mentioned before, the mixed-use zone and the rezoning of the properties associated with that designation. Also adding replacement housing requirements and occupant protections, and also allowing an exemption for affordable housing projects subject to Assembly Bill 1397. Also, there was a municipal code amendment updating the ADU regulations at the time to be compliant with state law. And then there's further updates were continued throughout 2024 to update it even further as new legislation became effective within that year. Finally, in December of 2024, another MCA was approved to establish a ministerial process for lot consolidation for qualifying affordable housing projects, as well as incentives. Under Program 7, Affordable Housing Development, City continues to work with the selected developer, People's Self-Help Housing, for the 78-unit townhome project, together with the Housing Land Trust, Ventura County, to condition units as affordable into perpetuity. Continued highlights includes the City Council's adoption of further MCAs associated with a variety of the different housing types, updating density bonus regulations consistent with state law, and definitions and use matrices associated with small, large, family daycare homes, low-barrier navigation centers, manufactured homes, emergency and transitional housing, supportive housing, farm worker and employee housing, licensed residential care facilities for 7 or more, and emergency shelters. Under programs 12 and 13, the city was able to leverage CDBG grants to help the rehabilitation of 28 lower-income senior-owned mobile home units, as well as rehab of 72 affordable rental units at Bella Vista Apartments. Lastly, under Program 18, the Neighborhood Improvement Program, city's public works project has conducted bicycle, sidewalk, and other infrastructure improvement projects situated in the low resource and sensitive community areas of 3 different census tracts within the city. With that, staff's recommendations to receive and file the 2024 General Plan and Housing Element Annual Progress Report. Find that the action is not a project as defined under CEQA. And after tonight, staff will submit the report to the state prior to April 1st. And that would conclude my presentation. Available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. And we go first to Councilmember Adam.
Well, thank you, Mayor. You mentioned 1,963 units, and these are units that were approved by the city council, correct?
I'm sorry, could you restate?
You mentioned 1,963 units. These were units that were approved by the city council.
Combination of the Planning Commission and City Council.
Oh,
but
okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Basically,
They didn't quite
entitled
get to
projects
us.
by the city.
Right, so, but between the two bodies, 1,963. And that was over a time period of, couple of years? Pretty quick, wasn't it?
For the last 3 to 4 years.
3 to 4 years, okay. By my calculation, that's about 5% of the outstanding housing stock. This roughly 2,000 units would be about a 5% addition to what we have now,
Correct.
roughly.
Yeah.
You don't have to do the math, but anyway, so it's significant. It's significant. And they're all in different stages of development. Some are still at, the start line, some are moved a little bit further, but they're all in the pipeline. Okay. That's what I wanted to make people aware of, that the council is very familiar with our housing needs, and these numbers, I believe, show it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report. Can I just clarify real quick? I think I have the answer, but it states that this is a progress report. Is this more a compliance document, or is this more a report card on how we're doing as a city, or is it also factoring in what's actually being realized?
It's predominantly a compliance report. The General Plan Annual Progress Report is really our report for ourselves because it is based on our document, whereas the Housing Element Report is truly a compliance report.
Okay. And so in that, when we were looking at, the amount of units that we allocated and, what has been, how many applications have come up in our time frame from 21 to 29, we're not required to have all the units that are recommended to us or approved on our RE numbers to be built. To stay in compliance with this document, it's to make sure that we have put the units in place or found the land to put them in place, and then now it's on the private sector to build. That's correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Basically, the housing element with its adoption and identification of the housing sites to accommodate that RENA and the certification of that housing element, we had fulfilled that goal.
Perfect. Last question. On looking at some of the numbers, and we saw some of the categories on like, very low income, and nothing's been kind of delivered yet in that regards. I'm going to make an assumption here, but I would like you to clarify it. I'm assuming because, a lot of density in Thousand Oaks is very little density in a lot of other areas. And because affordable housing does challenge the developer, because now you have limited rent, so potential margin is squeezed in that you really need to find a lot of density to be able to pull in some of those, maybe very low income units. Are we expecting that we might see more of those on some of the larger projects to come about? Am I looking at that correctly?
Yeah, generally, the larger projects will have that kind of economies of scale to accommodate the affordable housing. So, and it's those projects that are obviously struggling with the financing. But yeah, those are why, the fact that those aren't moving forward at this point is why there's none of the affordable units are having permits pulled.
Okay, that was what I thought. Thank you for the clarification.
Councilmember Engler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. I know this is primarily a report to HCD at the state and letting them know our efforts and whatnot going along the way. Our bottom line is a little bit slim right now in terms of what's been produced. At what point, or is there a point at which the state looks askew at what we're doing down here in terms of actual production? Is there, I know our responsibility is to provide for the locations for these units. We're not required to build them, but does an HCD also expect some performance? And where is are we with almost zero built? Are we running into issues where HCD is going to start looking at us a little bit closer?
HCD, so part of this annual progress report, not only are we reporting on the building permits, but we're also reporting on all the other programs that are meant to incentivize and help those projects along. So as long as we are working on those programs, doing outreach to developers, creating other incentives and so forth, would be following our housing element goals. So I would not, as long as we are following through with what we committed to with all the programs in the housing element, it'd be hard for HCD to come after us and say, you're now getting penalized because you've done everything you could possibly as a city, and to penalize us for something that's beyond our control. I don't see that.
Thank you for that, because I think we've made a very good faith effort to achieve these goals that HCD has given us through the RENA numbers. Some of the things, as you mentioned, are out of our control. Interest rates, housing costs, financing, all of that are out of our control. At our goal-setting session last week, we talked about doing outreach to some of our larger contractors. Can you talk a little bit about the types of tools that you might have to assist them, or what types of problems are you finding that our contractors are running up against?
If I may begin to answer that particular question, it's a really good point. The city would be in a much different position, and one obviously much worse, if we did not have almost 2,000 units already in the pipeline, with more coming along the way. Just in terms of the formulaic response of this report, HCD typically evaluates the city and their position on housing every 8 years when that new housing cycle begins. So that's when they assess where we've been in the previous 8 years, and they provide guidance on where we need to go in order to receive the next approval of our housing element. In terms of the units that we have pending, we go to great lengths to try to partner with the developers to move forward to bring much needed housing to the community, particularly in the affordable levels. Staff has begun to reach out to each one of the developers of the entitled projects to see what it is that they would need in order to move forward. And just to reiterate that we're ready and willing to move their projects precisely through the process. Additionally, many of those projects have development agreements which were designed to facilitate the actual building of housing. Everything from deferring when fees were to be paid, to providing a longer entitlement horizon in order to sort of weather potential market conditions. So this is something that we thought about at the time these projects moved forward. And also just to provide them with the ability to submit their plans early so they're ready to go when market conditions improve.
Are we trying to make allowances then for the typical difficult market that's out there right now, extending the entitlements, that sort of thing, to help them along so they don't have to go through the entire process again?
When possible, when projects that suffer from a development agreement, they have an extended horizon already, which typically matches what our extension process would be in the code. And that's to help facilitate their planning for the actual development of the project. As many of you may be aware, these are some of the larger projects that are coming forward with the city, which takes longer site preparations, and they just take longer to get off the ground and to begin to build. And that's part of the consideration when preparing development agreements along the lines of providing a timeline for activity.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're all excited to see these projects in the pipeline, and hopefully we can see some of the fruits of everyone's labor here pretty soon.
Thank you. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mayor Newman. I think Councilmember Engler had a string of thought pulled from my mind exactly, but just for further clarification on the 1,900 plus units that I believe were entitled previous to me sitting on the council, is there, if you have them off the top of your head, do any of those units land in the low to moderate housing areas? Am I talking about the 78 units specifically? Yeah, okay. Seeing nodded heads.
Yeah, I mean, it would include the Herbs Hillcrest 78 townhomes. All of those are affordable, predominantly low income, and then some moderate. But many of the large projects that Kelvin mentioned that received development agreements, whether it's the Latigo Hillcrest project at 333, those have low-income units. The Timber School site development have all. So most of those projects were associated with density bonuses. So they basically have to build the affordable housing units to qualify for that development. And that was all wrapped into those development agreements.
Okay, so we're just seeing those hard zeros for 2024 because those were approved and kind of in a different stage from previous years, but still part of our total, I think, 2,000 plus units.
So roughly just under 300 of those are going to be in an affordable category, from very low up to sort of moderate, but most of those are going to be in the low range to help those in most need in the community.
Okay, I appreciate that. I in the staff report, I just really fixated on table B, and so that's where I was trying to fill in some of those gaps. Because it says the allocation for 2021 to 2029, so I missed a few of those years. I appreciate the context. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just have three quick questions. Mr. Holt, you and I went over this in the staff meeting, but just to get this on the public record, would you agree that the impact in Thousand Oaks of state mandates like SB 9 or SB 35, that the impacts of those here have been fairly minimal in terms of the number of applications that have been received and processed?
That is correct. I mean, we have not received a qualifying SB 385 project to date. And then, of those units that were issued, I believe 3 units were associated with SB 9 projects.
And of course, with the revised fire risk maps, putting more of the city in very high-risk category, that would further restrict the places where SB 9 applications anyway could apply, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, the SB 35, SB 9, SB 1123, all of those have the same criteria. So you would not be able to take advantage of those laws within the very high hazard severity zones.
Very good. You also alluded in your report to CDBG grants and the use of those to meet one of the priorities that this council just reaffirmed, which is we do want to produce more affordable housing, and this is a useful tool to do that. There is some uncertainty about funding at the federal level. My question is with regard to grants that the city receives from the federal government, are we aware of any issues with funding at the current moment? Are we receiving all the grants that we have applied for?
So at this time, I'm not aware of any grants being impacted by actions at the federal level at this time. With the projects that we have in the pipeline, they all have not moved forward for various reasons.
Sure.
And it's really individual and unique to each individual project. For instance, the project on the Kennedy Wilson site, there are issues with the parking garage, just in terms of the cost of construction. On the Kmart site, that project, we're working with them to update their codes to the building cycle because staff is so efficient in approving their plans. We now have a new code cycle coming up that they'll have to comply with. Others, it's financing. Each project is structured differently in how they're financed, and that also is subject to market conditions, which are varying at the moment. But all of those things play a factor much more than, say, funding at the federal level right now.
I appreciate that. So basically the answer is, with regard to CDBGs, is that there is no current impact on funding for those.
That is correct.
Yeah, I was planning to address all those other factors, but in comments, not in questions. So we're good for now on grants. Glad to hear it. And then my final question, again, this does touch on affordability. Mr. Holt, you made a comment in your presentation that certainly larger projects with an affordable component are struggling with finance. Struggling was your term. With financing, with getting to the point where there's a building permit. And I would agree that is currently why there's this delta between a large number of entitled projects and the smaller number of building permits that have been issued. My question is whether you would agree that that also applies even to larger projects that have no affordable component. Like for example, the project at the lakes, would you agree has been held over because of it is seeking additional time in this difficult financing environment?
Yeah, I would say that's an accurate statement. I mean, I think just those with the affordable units are just impacted that much more.
Even more, right? Because on top of a difficult financing environment, they also have the added challenge of finding a subsidy to make up the delta between market rate and whatever the affordable rate would be, correct?
Correct.
Very good. Thank you. And thanks again for your report. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Okay, we turn now to public speakers, and we have one speaker on Zoom, and that is Mr. Jackson Piper. Good evening, Mr. Piper.
Good evening, Mayor Newman and members of the City Council. Thank you for reviewing this presentation and letting me speak on it as well. I guess I should state my city or my place of residence. I'm from unincorporated Newbury Park. I'm also a member of Ventura County YIMBY and have been active in housing activism throughout the city and the county for a number of years now. I wanted to basically say that, well, the numbers aren't great in terms of what we've actually produced in Thousand Oaks so far. honestly, everyone is pretty much struggling with this situation right now with the economy and the housing production. If you look at Fair Housing Elements, Housing Tracker, if you look at all the other cities in Ventura County and the county itself, only Ojai and the county of Ventura, which both have very low targets, are on target to meet their RHNA numbers. And that was using last year's data, so I have to look at this year's when it is available. But the expectation is that a lot of production that is supposed to be happening, that's kind of in the pipeline, is slowed down and won't really be available as actual realized housing for quite a while until the economy gets better. So that's my long-winded way of saying that while the numbers are not good, I do appreciate all the efforts that the city of Thousand Oaks has made so far to produce more housing, and I hope that you will keep it up. Please continue looking at any regulatory barriers to making affordable housing more available in the city. There are more state laws coming down the pipeline, and there probably will be each and every legislative session until we actually solve housing throughout the state. So just, I know that's not always a comfortable thing to deal with, but it is unfortunately necessary. There's still a huge shortage of housing throughout the state, and everyone's trying, and not very many communities right now, especially those with larger populations and larger housing demands, are really reaching the targets they're supposed to reach. So just please keep going. Please keep approving good housing projects, especially those with affordable components. And I will definitely see you more as more housing projects go before the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piper. Appreciate your comments. Staff, is there any additional comments, follow-ups? Okay, very good. I want to turn to council for discussion or motion. See Councilmember Adam has his hand up.
I would like to add that Ojai's RHNA number is 53. And what is our RHNA number?
2,621.
I could see where they would have a little better chance of being on track with 53. Anyway, that's neither here nor there, kind of. So we all knew this was going to be the year of implementation for our general plan that we worked so diligently to bring forth. And I think some of what got lost is in this whole discussion about housing is there are other things we've done, as notated in the staff reports. The mixed-use zoning districts, very important. The zoning code update, the climate action plan, downtown master plan, it's all part of it. And this will be going on for a while, I suspect, to implement our general plan. That point that you brought up, Bob, that was kind of interesting about, where they can tell us, the state can say, well, you have to tell us where we would build these houses, which we've done, but there's always this question, could they actually, mandate that we build them? Which I can't see that happening. I mean, I suppose there's ways they could say we have to work with developers in certain ways, but I mean, after all, we don't build housing. The private side does. We don't build it. We approve it, but we don't build it. So I don't think it'll hopefully ever come to that. And I'll just say, big picture, what I see here, yeah, there's some difficulties getting some project off the ground, but between the Planning Commission and the City Council, we've approved 1,963 units of housing over the last 3 or 4 years, and 289 of those units were affordable. That's 15%. If you remember, our inclusionary housing ordinance called for only 10. So we're 5% above the game, which I think is great, The more affordable, the better. So I think we're doing a good job. Oh, and I really like what you said, Kelvin, about how the city stands ready to work with developers to get these projects off the ground. I think that's great, and I think you're communicating well with the different projects we've approved to make that happen. And I look forward eventually, as we discussed during the priority session, that maybe we can drill down and look at some of these projects individually and find exactly where we are. I appreciate you getting back to us on that, so thank you. So, I guess I might as well move it while I'm at it. What am I moving here? Department Report 12A, the general plan, housing, well, you covered it up. What's the rest of it? Staff recommendations.
Based on the recommendations.
Based on all that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Engler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, I think we're justifiably proud of what we've been doing in the last few years of approving these locations for housing. I think we recognize the fact that our city needs more housing, and we're happy to do our bit to make that happen. And I appreciate staff, especially going and meeting with some of our developers who, and trying to see if there's any barriers that we can do anything about to make sure that they can get over the finish line with these. Mr. Piper mentioned the state is looking at additional housing laws and that they're going to ask us to comply with. For my friends in the state legislature, I would love if we could find out a way other than just agree with us on this goal of more housing, but also to come up with a method of helping to fund, especially lower income units that we all recognize we need to do. In the old days with the redevelopment agencies, we were able to designate a large sum of money to create this low-income housing. It's not a mystery why after the RDA went away that we no longer had the funds to be able to do that. So I would ask my friends in the legislature to look at how we can come up with a way of funding some of this very needed lower income housing that we all recognize would benefit everyone. So with that, I would support the recommendation.
Mayor Pro Tem Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. You're funny tonight, Al. You had some good ones. 53 arena number for Ojai. I want to start by saying, for what we're controlling in the steps that we've made, I look at that, and even though you want the private sector to act, the private sector acts when they can, right? When they see an opportunity, they go for it. And me being in this industry, it is extremely hard right now, right? Like 2 years ago when the rates, went up the way they did, what everybody was saying in commercial real estate was survive till 25. That was like the motto. And I think because everybody had this expectation that this was going to be short term, you didn't see the market correct maybe the way it would if the expectation was different. And you got to a point where, because projects take a few years to be realized and most real estate developments operate off bridge debt or short-term debt, you started seeing people start getting in a pinch when the market didn't start fixing itself or the interest rates didn't start dropping. And so, I think we're getting to a point where the new normal will be realized, and I do believe that the second the cap rates and interest rates start to make sense again, you will see a big influx of cash come in. Like, capital doesn't like sitting on the sidelines. It's sitting on the sidelines right now. So I do believe we will see that when the market fixes itself or normalizes. But great work. Thank you, staff. And with that, I would support your motion as well, Al.
Thank you. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mayor Newman. I think I'll just follow with probably echo my colleagues here. Wonderful work, and I am well aware of some of the great work we've done around affordable housing here in town. I have several friends, personal friends, in neighboring cities who are not so blessed with a collaborative council or even the staff to support doing things that are outside of the box or so collaborative within the city, especially when it relates to private partnerships. So thank you to staff, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And I too want to add my thanks to staff for these annual reports. I recognize that, as Mr. Holt said, the housing element portion of this is primarily for regulatory compliance, but it is, in addition, a quite interesting annual snapshot. And I look forward to this every year because it tells us where we are and where we aren't on housing. And I think that is utility just by itself, in addition to whatever our friends in Sacramento expect us to do. And I had a few takeaways from reading this report. One of them is that ADUs remain extremely popular. For the past 3-4 years running, they have been in excess of 80% of all building permits issued. This year, they were above 90% of all building permits issued. So to the extent that housing is getting built, and we all agree that more could be done, but the housing that is getting built, ADUs are a big part of that picture. That would be takeaway number one. Takeaway two has to do with this big gap between the 84 building permits, was it, issued this year versus this other number that Councilmember Adam alluded to, the 1,963 entitled units. And that's a rather sizable gap. A bit of good news on the housing picture is that, as you alluded to, we expect hundreds and hundreds of those entitled but not yet built units to be issued building permits next year. Just 2 projects alone, Timber School and the Latigo project across from Amgen, is something like 550 units right there. If and when the Tio Ranch project completes its remediation work with Cal EPA, that's an additional 420 units. So it's quite possible we will be looking at a bump of more than 500 units a year from now, and possibly something like 900 something units a year from now. So it's not all bad news. I mean, I realize this is a tough environment. I completely take my colleague Mayor Pro Tem Taylor's point on that. But because we've done so much, this council has done so much work on entitlement, I do expect there to be a large conversion next year on this number of entitled units into units that actually help with building permits issued. And we see shovels in the ground because of that. Another point, I just want to echo what all of my colleagues said. Councilmember Adams said it well, the more affordable, the better. And I'm so glad this council unanimously reaffirmed last week our priority of building more affordable housing here. We've made it a priority for several years. We need to keep going with that. We also need to recognize, as for the reasons Mayor Pro Tem Taylor alluded to, that entitlement is only step one of several steps that it takes to get affordable housing done, or housing of any kind, really. There needs to be entitlement. There needs to be a calculation of building costs, both materials and labor. Builder then needs to go get insurance. And then the hardest hurdle of all is the interest environment. All developers tend to work with other people's money, and the cost of that money is a major impediment. So I would say to those who shake their fist at government and say, you're not doing enough to produce housing, I would, number one, go back to Councilmember Adams citing that figure of 1,963 units that this council has entitled. And number two, point to the interest rate environment and say, yeah, that needs to change. And barring that, we're going to continue to have this big delta between the number of entitled units and the number of shovels in the ground. And again, on that point, our city needs, or the more affordable, the better. I fully agree. Absolutely, we need to do that. Councilmember Engler added the city needs more housing. On the affordable point, we do need to look at what kind of housing we produce. Over the years, this city has been quite good at producing market rate housing. In the previous RENA cycle, we hit 614% of our quota, so we're doing fine there. Over the same period, we hit 3% of our quota for low-income housing. So I see already that these numbers have improved measurably, dramatically since then, and I'm very glad to see that. And I'm looking forward to this council seeing even greater improvement next year because of these policies that we've adopted. And thank you again for showing us that it doesn't always look like there's progress, but we are moving the needle on this. We are changing the numbers on this in an appreciable way. And I think we'll see an even better improvement of this next year. So thank you. With that, I'll ask our clerk if she can please prepare us for a vote.
Mr. Mayor, can I have your verbal vote, please?
Aye.
Thank you, and that motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Finally, we turn to City Manager Drew Powers for announcements and upcoming issues. Mr. Powers.
Thanks so much, Mayor Newman. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Hard to believe we'll be into April. The 8th of April, we'll be here. We have a couple special presentations that evening, followed by study sessions on our capital improvement budget and our downtown project. Those are the items we're currently slated for the 8th of April.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. And with that, I will adjourn our meeting to our next regular meeting on April 8th, 2025. Good night, Thousand Oaks.